It has come to my attention that an alarming number of you are just going around town, flapping your damn gums to any poor soul you see on the street, just to let them know you have an empirically incorrect, and frankly, spiritually misguided opinion on the Knights of the Old Republic remake and the rumored updates to the combat system. The fact of the matter is, the current real-time with pause combat system might need updating, but not to an action-oriented Neo God of War combat style. That can be fun, but it is not ideal here for reasons I promise you I will address. I'm sure many of you are watching and you feel pretty confident that you're on the right side of history on this issue, so go ahead and bet me a bona fide YouTube thumbs up on it. And if my charm and rhetorical stylings do not meet your standards, feel free to take it back on your way out to the lobby, big guy.
I know what you were thinking. What qualifies this cantankerous fool in his pretty mouth to speak with authority on this issue? Well, buddy, I'll have you know that I was a master of ceremonies at over 400 weddings in the year of our Lord 2016 alone. I am, however, obligated to point out that some have argued, primarily Judge Davis of Ghost Mountain, Kentucky, that I was really less of a master of ceremonies and more of a public nuisance that ruined every wedding in the county for a year with confusing monologues, overly sexual renditions of 90s country music, and desperate romantic advances to the mothers of the brides. I call it art, they call it criminal mischief. We'll have to agree to disagree. But I'll tell you what, just as soon as my community service is done, I'm going to be right back at it, buddy. Right back at it.
You know, I got hot. I went down a rabbit trail, but the important thing is I'm going to present to you a short educational missive that you can share with your friends and loved ones when discussing this sensitive topic. It is fortuitous that many of us have recently been incentivized to replay Knights of the Old Republic through its release on the Nintendo Switch. It's refreshed the memory of us old hands and allowed a lot of new players to experience the game for the first time. I have noticed, however, that many of the new players are being turned off by the combat system, and many of the advocates for a change to a more button mashy shooty experience come from that camp, and that is understandable to a degree. The game's old enough to drink, and parts of it have always been more than a little opaque. The real problem I think people have, though, is that the game never really forces you to engage with its deeper mechanics. It is simply too easy to roll a min-max Jedi character, auto-level all your companions, and beat the brakes off of every single combat encounter that you come across. As a result, the current combat feels unnecessary and distracting and stilted, but I think a rebalance would make the player more involved, make the system feel engaging and essential. The strength of the D&D system has always been that the story you tell about your character in your head can be numerically quantified and demonstrated in the mechanics. You want to play a well-read, well-rounded nerd who's just yoked to hell and back but has a glass jaw? High strength, high intelligence, and throw that constitution score to the basement, buddy, because you ain't got room for it for all the damn books you're carrying around. Now, in my dreams, a new KOTOR expands upon its influences. BioWare was hot off of making the legendary Baldur's Gate 2 and Neverwinter Nights, and they took the lessons they learned from making those games and applied them to Knights of the Old Republic, and they made it a little more palatable to a wider audience by notching down the difficulty and pulling the camera back behind the player's back. There are beautiful modern examples of this genre. Games like Pillars of Eternity, Divinity Original Sin, and Pathfinder Kingmaker have expanded on this old-school RPG approach, introducing new concepts and quality-of-life features aplenty. The upcoming Baldur's Gate 3 promises to do all that while bringing the graphics and presentation into the present decade. But if those are my dreams, brothers and sisters, let me tell you about my nightmares. Those of us of a certain age have seen these signs and tidings before. We have watched the titans of the role-playing genre be stripped bare and laid low in the name of accessibility and wider appeal. We watched Fallout 2, a brilliant tactical RPG, become Fallout 3, some kind of weird hybrid of its legendary forebears in the Elder Scrolls Oblivion. Dragon Age Origins, the most direct descendant to KOTOR in the BioWare lineage, became Dragon Age 2, a middling hack-and-slash action game with a decent story. While my personal preference would certainly be to keep a deep, mechanics-driven campaign just like my daddy used to play, I also recognize that Asper does not make games just for me, yet. There are market realities that must be observed, and a large and vocal contingent of the game-playing population is a clamoring and a yammering for a new kind of combat. Perhaps we should look to the east for our compromise. The Final Fantasy VII Remake took a turn-based role-playing game and turned it into a gorgeous, fluid, and responsive real-time with pause action game. The combat is paced so seamlessly that a lot of players think of it as more of a hack and slash action game, although in reality, you are slowing down the combat to what is essentially a pause and changing between party members rather frequently, hitting your menus, selecting skills, but the presentation is so snappy that you barely notice or care. There would still be challenges regarding how skills and character building could be implemented, but it would still be a far shorter road to hoe than Square Enix had with the original Final Fantasy VII's menu-based combat system. I suppose, at the end of the day, it just seems strange to me that with a sequel to the fantastic Jedi Fallen Order just around the corner, that there would still be an appetite for yet another Star Wars game where pressing the X button swings a lightsaber. Perhaps it has been the drought of Star Wars gaming that brought us to this point. Recall, though, my friends, the halcyon days of the new millennium. The Jedi Knight series brought us a masterful blend of first-person shooter and third-person combat. Star Wars Galaxies was an experience in collective role-playing that has not been matched or really attempted since. Empire at War allowed you to manage your forces on multiple levels, all complementing each other like a well-made meatball slug. I love that game. Battlefront, Rogue Squadron, Bounty Hunter, we had an embarrassment of riches. Dozens of games as different as daylight and dark. With the end of the Electronic Arts exclusivity agreement, perhaps if we hold our toes and wiggle our jaw the right way, we may have hope for a new golden era of games. There seems to be a misunderstanding that KOTOR was turn-based because it was old, as though we didn't know how to make an action game in 2003. Knights of the Old Republic was exactly the game BioWare meant to make, and exactly the game we wanted and fell in love with. To remove the dice-rolling elements would be throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We can have lots of Star Wars games, my friends. They can all be different, and they could all be good. Except for the Quantic Dream thing. That thing blows donkey ass.